The fate of Ivalice is in your hands. When Marsh and his friends open an ancient magical tome, their small town is transformed into a fantasy-filled kingdom known as Ivalice. Now Marsh must take up the sword and master the arts of war if he has any hope of returning home. Guide Marsh and his clan against countless foes in tactical combat, and discover the wonders of Ivalice. How will you restore your town to normal? And do you even want to? Hello friends, it's the Boxhead Baron here, and today we're going to take a look back at Final Fantasy Tactics Advance for the Game Boy Advance. First, a quick rundown. Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, also known as FFTA, was originally released in 2003 as a collaboration between Nintendo and Square Enix. This was one of the first Square Enix games released for a Nintendo platform, following their fraying of relations during the PS1 Nintendo 64 era. On the development side of the house, FFTA was created by Yasumi Matsuno, who was the original creator for Final Fantasy Tactics on the PS1. From a critic's standpoint, FFTA was very well received, scoring in the upper 8s pretty much across the board. Amongst the Final Fantasy devoted, the game was much more controversial. FFTA departed heavily from the aesthetic, story themes, and plot of the original Final Fantasy Tactics, which by this point was very heavily regarded for its immersive world and deep storytelling. Whether warranted or not, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance was definitely considered a more childlike and lighter toned experience, the only real apparent similarity being the battle mechanics and some aspects of the job class system for your characters that got carried over. Don't get me wrong though, we're not here today to bash on Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. In fact, I'm here to convince you that this is a game worthy of a second look. That it's a game that is often misunderstood and whose deep RPG mechanics and compelling gameplay loop still hold up to this day and make the game worth sinking your teeth into even in 2023. The characters, plot, and setting. First and foremost, FFTA is a game that is centered on its gameplay, with everything else coming second. But that's not to say that the game is completely devoid of plot, characters, or interesting locales for you to visit. The game does a very good job of setting the tone right from the opening sequence, in which your character, Marsh, or some people pronounce it Marche, has recently moved to a new town named Ivalice, which as it so happens is the name of the world from the original Final Fantasy Tactics, and is actually the brainchild of Matsuno and has been used in many of his projects, including Final Fantasy XII and Vagrant's story. In this game though, at least initially, it does not take on the fantasy setting that you would expect. Instead, it gives off a 1950s America vibe. On his first day of school, Marsh befriends two other children, Mute, an unpopular kid who's always getting picked on, and Ritz, a tomboyish girl with dyed red hair. Together, the three participate in a snowball fight against the classroom's bullies, which makes for a very convenient tutorial battle, after which the three friends decide to meet up at Marsh's house after school to look at a cool new book that Mute discovered. While walking home, the three come across a deadbeat who is revealed to be Mute's dad, and who happens to be the Cid of this Final Fantasy game. You learn here that Mute's mom has passed away, and his deadbeat dad is the only family he has left. And it's not that Cid's abusive to his son, it's more just that he's a loser and can't hold down a job. And when the trio finally gets to Marsh's house with the book, you're shown that Marsh actually has a younger brother as well who's in a wheelchair. The four characters sit down and open the book, and the rest is pretty much history. Magic happens, and the characters are teleported to a medieval fantasy version of Ivalice. I don't want to go too much further than that, in case you're actually interested in playing this game for yourself and you haven't experienced it yet. After being teleported to the fantasy version of Ivalice, Marsh is separated from the other kids, and a Moogle named Montblanc takes him in and allows him to join his clan, which I'll get to what a clan is here in a moment. Despite its on the surface lighter nature, Final Fantasy Tactics Advanced covers some very deep themes. It tells the story of four kids who are magically teleported to a fantasy world where they can live out their dreams being princes, heroes, warriors, going on mystical adventures, and just having a good time. A world where you're not an outcast. One where you're no longer crippled and are free to use your legs and move wherever you want. Where your mother is still alive and your dad is a champion. One where you are not bullied for your physical appearance. A story where doing the right thing means crushing the hopes, dreams, and joy of your friends. A story of the struggle of doing the right thing, even when everyone around you doesn't want you to. The clan. Your clan is your team, or in RPG terms, your party. It is composed of characters you want in the group in numbers no more than 23. The clan has different skills that can be leveled up, things like combat, smithing, appraise, and everything else you see listed here. Leveling up these skills allow you to take on additional jobs, as well as giving some nice little bonuses when you reach certain thresholds. And by bonuses, I mean loot. Think equipment and that kind of stuff. Randomly generated characters will ask to join your party throughout the game after you complete missions, and it's your choice whether you want to recruit them or not. World map symbols. The player navigates Ivalice using the world map, with each area being represented by a symbol on the map. At the start of the game, the map will be almost completely empty, but as you play it, you will unlock new symbols, which means you as the player actually get to determine the layout of the world. And by placing the symbols in certain patterns and orders, you actually get rewarded with items. If you Google around on the internet, you can find some pretty impressive strategies for how you should lay out your map in order to secure the most useful items you can. But if you're anything like me, you don't care about any of that and you just want to lay them out wherever you want. It's also worth noting that moving one space on the map consumes 1 day of in-game time. This is important to know for later. Clan turf. Throughout the game, you'll compete with other clans for turf, which basically just means control of an area on the map. Whenever an area is under the control of your clan, you'll get certain bonuses. For example, if the area is a town, you might get discounts at the item shop. The game flow. I mentioned earlier that Final Fantasy Tactics Advance is a game with a very strong game loop. The general flow works like this. From the world map, you'll want to visit a town. Each town has the same basic facilities, with some towns having their own extra additional facility that's unique to them. But every town will have an item shop where you can buy equipment, armor, weapons, and also a pub. At the pub, you can listen to rumors, which often detail events happening around the world. The main purpose of the pub, though, is it is the place where you can accept missions, which are one of the main components of this game. Almost all progression revolves around taking on and completing missions with your clan. With 300 missions total in the game, there's definitely plenty of content for you to enjoy in this game, and I'll go into deeper detail on the missions here in a moment. Back to the flow of the game though. Basically, you go to towns, hit up the pub, take on missions, complete the mission, which is normally just a battle, collect the spoils and loot from completing the mission, and then book it back to a pub to then go and get more missions. And then to kind of complete the loop, it's not pictured here, but the other real areas are customizing your characters, changing their job classes, and then equipping them with new weapons and armor, which is actually how they learn new attacks and abilities in this game. A lot of times the joy of completing the missions is getting the loot at the end. It's always exciting when you get a new weapon that you haven't had yet, not just because it could be a stronger weapon than something you already have, but also because this is where your characters learn their attacks. In general, there's a few different types of missions. They range from regular missions, which are your typical go to this area, do a battle, to encounter missions, which involve fighting other clans. And then there's free area missions. Once completed, they normally result in an area of the map becoming yours, that is, becoming a part of your turf. And then last but not least are non-battle missions, which are commonly referred to as dispatch missions. These are missions where you actually have to pick a character out of the list in your party, and you dispatch them for a number of days on their own to complete the mission. So this adds a layer of strategy because you can't be dispatching all of your strongest units at once. Otherwise, you won't have enough powerful units left to complete a battle party for the real battles that you have to participate in. Missions have a variety of different requirements that need to be met in order for you to accept them. Some can be accepted with no conditions, but others require you to have a certain specific item, maybe a specific job class, or even your clan skill levels to be at certain levels before you can accept them. Every mission has a cute little description, and it's through these mission descriptions that you really learn a lot about the world of Ivalice. I saw a bad wizard doing something up in the snow mountains. He's up to no good, I know it. He was making all this ice. From Lottie, shopkeeper's son. Gotta love it. This month's most wanted, Dioghilev, God Eye, 2800 gil. Using alchemy to make counterfeit gil, rumored to have a third eye. God damn it, Dioghilev. Why can't you just be a good boy? Races and jobs. The version of Ivalice in this game is inhabited by several different races, each of which can be recruited into your clan. The races are as follows. Humans, Bonga. Then there's the magic-inclined Numu, the ever-popular Viera, which was further popularized in Final Fantasy XII, and then last but not least is the Moogle, which if you're a fan of Final Fantasy at all, needs no introduction. Every clan member in FFTA has a job assigned to them. And like the PS1 game, these jobs can be changed. However, since there are now races, the jobs are actually race specific. Each race has its own job tree, with some jobs being shared between races. For example, all of the races besides the Bonga and Viera can become black mages. The humans are a very well-rounded race, can perform various jobs of both magical as well as physical persuasion. Some standout human jobs include the paladin, the ninja, the hunter, and the blue mage. The Bonga, on the other hand, are much more physical oriented. Some standouts being the dragoon, defender, and gladiator. The Numu are the opposite. They are much more magically inclined, with jobs like the time mage, illusionist, alchemist, and morpher. The Viera are very well-rounded, but excel at speedy classes like assassin, sniper, fencer, and some unique magical classes like the red mage, the elementalist, and the summoner. And then the Mughals. They gave these guys pretty much all the gimmicky stuff, so your jugglers in here, the animist who uses animal abilities, the gadgeteer whose abilities can either hit your party or the opponents at random. Job abilities. Every job in the game has a set of abilities that can be learned by it. In the original Final Fantasy Tactics, the abilities were learned in basically a giant skill tree for each job, and you would just spend job points on the abilities. In FFTA though, the abilities are actually tied to the weapons and armor the character equips. And as they participate in fights with that equipment equipped, they'll earn points towards unlocking it permanently. This is very similar to how ability unlocking worked in Final Fantasy IX. I actually really like this system because it makes acquiring new gear very exciting, because you never know what abilities are going to be on a new weapon that you might acquire. Is it the Ultima spell? Or the ability for thieves to steal opponents' weapons? Or a useful counterattack? The excitement is uncontainable. Abilities fall into one of four categories: either action abilities, which are attacks and just moves you can use in battle; reaction abilities, which are your counters, blocking arrows, that kind of stuff; support abilities, things like being able to double hand swords for more damage, or equipping shields in a job that normally wouldn't be able to without the ability; and then combo abilities. Once mastered, every ability is mix and matchable, so you can switch a character's job and keep the action abilities of another job equipped, or the counter ability from one job to another. It's a very versatile system. This system is really where so much of the joy of the game is at. Everything else around the game facilitates just customizing your characters, mixing and matching stuff, and just seeing your characters develop throughout the game as you play more and more. Because if the battles make up half the game, the other half is spent navigating menus outside of battle. And speaking of battles, the battle system. As weird as it sounds, I don't want to spend too much time talking about this game's battle system, mostly because it's very standard for the genre, and if you're at all familiar with Final Fantasy Tactics style battle systems, that's basically what this game has, with all the benefits and drawbacks that come with it. Fights in this game tend to be a little bit faster than they were in the original Tactics, or even something like Tactics Ogre, but they're still pretty slow paced. You're gonna spend a lot of time waiting for animations to finish and for NPC characters to move. One new wrinkle this game has though is the law and judge system. Challenging authority plays pretty heavily into the story of this game, and the developers did a good job at tying these themes into the actual battle system. One of the participants of each battle is actually a judge, and some people might recognize these characters as something out of FF12, but this game actually predates that one. The judge has two functions in every battle. The first is to blow his whistle to move bodies around, and the second is to make your life a living hell. Each battle has something outlawed that you can view from the menu before you enter the battle or during the battle. Sometimes the thing that's outlawed could be something very minor, like you can't cast the shell spell, and sometimes literally using the attack command is outlawed, which is literally just the basic swing your sword to attack command. If you break the law, the judge will blow his whistle, run over to you, and give you a card, either a yellow card or a red card. Get 2 yellow cards on one character or 1 red card, and that unit is instantly removed from battle and sent to jail, meaning you'll then be out of a unit for the rest of the battle, and will have to pay money to get them out of jail once the battle has concluded. Even worse though, if Marsh, the main character, gets a red card or 2 yellow cards, he does not get sent to jail. Instead, you instantly get a game over, ending the battle and forcing forcing you to restart the battle. And now in the game's defense, the enemies also have to obey the laws, except for the boss characters, because they get a special little badge that makes them immune to the laws, so the law isn't actually applied fairly. And to make things even worse, it's actually not just one thing that's outlawed per battle. As the game progresses, the laws become harsher and harsher. Eventually, there'll be actually up to 3 things outlawed per battle. The laws rotate each in-game day, so oftentimes when you want to participate in a battle, you'll actually circle around the symbol on the map where the battle is supposed to take place until you rotate the laws to the ones that you find acceptable. This is just not good game design in my opinion, and you do eventually get some anti-law cards that will nullify laws, but you have to have the right anti-law card for the law you want to nullify. I can appreciate what they were trying to do, and it's definitely unique, but this is easily one of the most hated mechanics of this game. Enough doom and gloom though, let's cover some additional features. Rapid style. Combos. This game actually has combos you can perform, but I never use these. Maybe I'm missing out, you let me know. Summons. Each race eventually gets a summon it can perform in battle. These should not be confused for the summons the summoner class can perform. Monster catching. This game actually has a monster catching system where a hunter job can capture the monsters, and then the morpher job uses the souls of these monsters to equip as weapons and to learn abilities. Multiplayer. This game actually has multiplayer where you can either team up or compete against friends using the Game Boy Advance link cable. Yogged. There are certain areas in the game called Yogged. These areas are lawless and there will be no judge during the battles. What this means is there are no laws, which is good, but it also means characters that are not revived before the end of the battle are permanently lost, similar to the original Final Fantasy Tactics. Experience points. Experience points are earned each battle each time a character performs an action. What this means is any action will yield a certain amount of experience points based on the level of the character performing the action and the level of the character that the action is performed on. Because of this, many players often resort to smacking their higher leveled characters with their lower leveled ones in order to get the lower leveled ones more experience points. Final Fantasy Tactics Advanced actually sold pretty well back in the day, but for some reason it kind of fell off the radar in recent times, and it's pretty rare to hear anybody mention it. Apart from its original release on the Game Boy Advance, it also received a release on the Wii U Virtual Console. But unfortunately, the Wii U Virtual Console is no more, which makes the Game Boy Advance version the only one that can still be acquired, without resorting to piracy, of course. Interestingly, this game actually received a sequel on the DS called Final Fantasy Tactics A2: Grimoire of the Rift. Let me know what your thoughts are about this game in the comments down below. I'd really be curious to know what other people's history is with this game, and if I'm the only one who remembers it from back in the day. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.